There's so many flubs and fuck ups that, were there, but nobody cared then, and I didn't care listening. And then I realized
different in the jam
the band
than what you normally get. Trey veered from what he normally played, which
I love this song, and I love hearing it in this incarnation of it, this version of it.
And we're back.
Thank
you everyone for joining us. I am joined by T tonight. Tim is taking a break. He is he doesn't like the Grateful Dead ones as much for some reason, T. I don't know what's going on there.
He says it's he just doesn't feel as comfortable talking about them as he does talking about Fish, which he does a great job. I mean, he knows what I like his opinions. I like hearing what he has to say with some of the stuff. It's a nice
it's nice. It's nice to have that other perspective of someone who isn't completely live through it, I guess.
Exactly. Or is obsessed with them, or I feel like he feels about Fish the way I feel about the Dead, so I understand sometimes his reluctancy to it. But yeah, it's you and I. It's just like the after shows.
I worked this tour. I saw the opening 4 shows at the Cap Center, and they continued to heat up after. It was the Ruben and Cerise tour where they broke that out. We got any other historical context?
When were the Cap shows?
The Cap Center in Largo, Maryland.
When were they before this?
They were at the end of March. They were at the beginning of March, I guess, the middle of March, and then they played somewhere else, and then it was one to North Carolina.
Yeah, because this was 91 was the year I saw my first show, actually, in June 28th at Mile High Stadium, which we will probably do a review of come the end of June. Hopefully we'll review that show. But yeah, 91 always has a little special place in my heart. So it was fun listening to a show a few months before I saw them. And this was a great show. Good stuff in this one. It was a good choice, whoever had it. So
we got
hey, thanks. I did have a real quick. I'll just say I did have a great trip. Paris is insanely awesome. Very fun, but it's nice to be back. I missed it.
We brought T back and sent Scoy over.
That's right. We did a trade.
So we did still have 2 keyboard players at this point. I'm going to put up the set list, which is interesting. I don't know. I feel like they stepped on each other's toes a lot. Let's talk a little bit about having the 2 keyboard players, especially when they play piano sound, or something.
I was gonna say that too. In a couple of the songs, it not messy, but it just sounded a little. I don't, especially we'll get to it at the end. But I thought Love Light. There's just something about Love Light with like the synth or the organ sounds and like the fake horn noises and stuff that drives me crazy with those later versions of it. And I thought if you just took Bruce's piano into it, it's cool. But like when you start mixing the 2 together, and I have nothing against Vince, like I'm not a Vince hater by any means, but I just feel like the 2 of them together, it was too much, right? You have 2 guys on the keys, you have 2 drummers, you have 2, like it was a little bit of too much. I know somebody asked, where was it about Hornsby? Where do you guys rate Hornsby? I always liked Hornsby with the Dead, honestly. I know he's probably the 3rd favorite guy that filled in those seats as far as the list of them go, but I liked when they toured with him. I liked when he stepped in. I think it was better after when it was just him and not Vince in there sometimes, but I don't know. I always like Bruce. I like in this show particularly, I feel like sometimes he brings a certain amount of energy to them. And I felt that right away in the Jack Straw. I felt like when he did his lines and when some of the piano, it kind of motivated the band a little bit more and they kind of picked up the pace. And I feel like also with him in it all through that first set, so many of the slower songs, like even Candyman, Peggy-O, they were faster. Even Black Peter in the second set, it was faster versions of slower songs that you're used to hearing, sort of that slow, methodical. And these all had a little bit of upbeat, a little upstep into them. So
Yes, Jack Straw. He wasn't playing accordion?
He was at the end. I remember seeing him. I was watching that. It was nice to have. I always like the ones where you can watch it. The video was a little shaky, which of course 91, you're getting it off a camcorder, obviously, and whoever could sneak it in there, as I tried to do a couple times. And so you're not expecting great quality, but it was fun to be able to watch it and see it. And yeah, especially at the end on the Baby Blue with him up there with his accordion playing next to Jerry was fun to watch. It was cool.
Yeah, I wish that they hadn't have brought Bruce in as a crutch. But as a keyboardist, I love Bruce. I think some of the like the late 90s, he used to play Yoshi's in San Francisco all the time, and I'd get tapes of those, and they were always fantastic. Throw a few Dead songs in. He's such a strong songwriter on his own. I really did like Valley Road, and there was one other one. They did two of his tunes.
Yeah. They did.
So there we go. The drummers were using their triggered snare samples. Okay.
Well, but I like, we always talk about the openings. We'll jump into it here with the first set. And I mean, I always talk about the bangers to open the shows, and Jack Straw is one of those that like just gets you going, right? Like it's one of those perfect openers. It kind of sets the tone. It was a good version of it. Like sometimes you got to wait till the second or third song to really when it kicks in. Sometimes I thought this one kind of kicked in, had a good version of it. It was a little short in some of it, but it
was short.
That was the only thing, was it didn't have the extended jam to come back into it, but it was fast paced. Like this whole show was, like I was saying, like some of the songs, it just felt faster and quicker. And I felt like they really picked up that pace once Bruce kind of hit his lines on that with the, always on the run, and then started playing the piano. And I think that kind of kicked the band into that gear, and it just kind of like that gear stayed in that gear for the rest of the show, especially going into the Peggy-O. I mean, when they dropped into that Peggy-O, it was a quicker Peggy-O than I was really used to. Like, sometimes Jerry gets very slow and very beautiful with it and really tells the story. And I felt like this one was a little bit snappier, so to speak.
Right. Also, it's interesting to note that Hornsby grew up a Deadhead. He loved the Grateful Dead. I mean, Vince was in the Tubes. They were doing Mondo Bondage and being in Xanadu with ELO and Olivia Newton-John, It was a whole different thing there where they came from, which I find fascinating, just the approach. When I talked to Bob Braylove at one time, and he was telling me about when Vince went to audition, and he was very nervous, and he called, and Bob was just like, be yourself, man, go in, play the songs. And obviously he got the gig. And then I asked him about the keyboard. I was like, what was up? And he said Vince had two pedals, and one of the pedals he could switch between organ, keyboard, or piano sound. And when he hit the keyboard sound, Bob had dealer's choice what to play. That's why we got like the sax sound and estimated and all these things, because Braylove was almost an eighth member, for the band at that point with Hornsby up there. So
yep. That's interesting, because that's that sound that I was referring to sometimes, is that overtaking sound sometimes. It's sort of, and you're just kind of like, a purist. You know how I am. I'm a purist with certain things, and like that I don't know, that sound just kind of ruins things for me sometimes. And sometimes it works okay, but not a lot.
What's funny about it too is that Jerry liked what Bob was doing so much with Vince that he's like, I want to kick up my MIDI game and do some crazy stuff. So we got like the flute sound and Built to Last, or trumpet sound and Built to Last. And things.
Yep.
All right, we digress. All right, it's all over now. Fantastic. I guess Bobby Womack wrote it originally. The Stones, I think, probably made it famous to a lot of people, but it's one that kicked around since the 70s. Bobby liked doing, and I thought this version was all fire.
Yeah. Bobby stepped up to the plate. One of those better Bobby covers that I enjoy him playing, and coming in strong with that sort of up pace of the show already. It fit perfectly in this spot, I thought. Sandwiched between a Peggy-O and a Candyman. Interesting spot for it, but Bobby crushed it. Like, I was really I was really into it. I'm sure a few people I see in the chat were at this show. It had to be fun. Like that's one of those jamming kind of uppity woohoo kind of songs, you know, where you're just kind of like into it and going. And it's a fun cover. Like you said, like the Stones kind of made it what it is. And I always liked when they cover some of those songs, like, you know, The Last Time and It's All Over Now, like some of those uppity fun beat songs. And this was one of those. And I thought Bobby didn't lay heavily on the Velveeta as he does later in this set with like the Looks Like Rain and his echoes and his things, and the even later with the Love Lights that he had going on with some of that stuff. So I thought it was nice to hear just sort of that straightish version of it with him just sort of rocking it. It's cool.
Yeah. Candyman. I love that song. I feel like Jerry could have done that more. I got a lot more Ramble on Roses than I did Candyman. Put it that way.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. For sure. Lyrics are so good. Again, that storytelling version of it is so good. But you're also kind of one of those songs where I'm used to it being slower. Like I'm used to Jerry really sort of vocalizing it and sort of, you know, and when those bigger moments hit, they hit harder when it's slower because he builds to that and like unleashes it a little bit and then pulls it back in and slows it down and then unleashes it. When it's a little quicker paced, the unleashed part gets kind of lost because you're already into it and going with it. So I get it. It's 90s. It's a different sound for them. They're not this, you know, obviously not the same as they were in the 80s, definitely not in the 70s. You know what I mean? But I don't know. It's just, you'll take it, but it's a different version of it that was a little bit quicker than you used to get. And even sometimes in the 90s, he did slow it down. And I just thought this whole show I thought was played at a quicker tempo than a lot of times, but love that song.
This couldn't have been more than Vince's 25th show because September of 90 was his first show. So they were still in flux and still and they had Bruce. Which, you know, they went through a whole nother thing when Bruce left. Then it was Vince, you know, basically them relearning again at that point.
Yeah. Which, I mean, it had to be a little, chaotic, but I don't know. It's just kind of a little hectic out there because again, Vince is still working on getting into the groove of being less than a year, 6 months into, not even that many shows into it yet. And then you have Hornsby over here bringing his elements and citing his stuff in it. So yeah, it definitely added a little bit of chaos to it, but it worked, right? Like, I mean, some of the songs, it still worked. It still flowed in the set. It still sounded good. They still made it work and made that sound happen, which is what great bands do.
It is what great bands do. I tell you what, I think the Tom Thumb Blues is the only song that Phil should sing.
I actually wrote that. I was like, maybe my favorite Phil song and the only one that I can like really appreciate him singing. Like it when he nails it, and he did a really, again, fast version of it though. Like I kind of turned around and turned back, and all of a sudden we were in Picasso Moon or whatever. And I was like, wait a minute, I feel like I got to rewind it. Did I miss verses here or something? But straight version, he didn't do his usual, like, you know, I don't even know what the drummer, my best friend, the drummer, won't even tell me what it is. I used the doctor line and kind of played it straight through in this one, which I was going to ask you because I know I saw you tweet out the drummer line. Who is his best friend? Is it Mickey or is it Billy back
Billy.
there?
I always thought it was Mickey for some reason. In my head, I didn't actually, it just automatically, it was Mickey.
Totally. But then it made more sense that it would be Billy with because Billy is such an asshead. And like, so it would make sense that Billy giving him, you know, like slipping him some tabs or something. He's like, what'd I just take? Enjoy the show. You know, like
have fun. Yeah. So there was the Hershey version, I think, is when Phil sings the dropped line. Can I just say about Tom Thumb though? On the Dylan album, it's on Highway 61. It is one of my favorite place songs because it's right before Desolation Row to close the album. And it's almost like the calm before the storm of Desolation Row. And fantastic choice. Good for you, Phil, for all the songs you could have picked.
And I tell you, it's one of those, it's almost like the Cool Colorado Rain line. When you get that in MSG or whatever, and he gets the I'm going back to New York City, you know, line. Like, I mean, that is such an iconic line, you know, like it's so good. So,
you know, I would throw Phil a bone with Broken Arrow because I thought that was interesting that they chose such a later era Robbie Robertson song to do. But on the other side, it was a hit. I mean, I think of Rod Stewart too, and I'm like,
Always.
God,
Oh
no
yeah, I
one-
was gonna say that's right where my head goes with that is Rod Stewart. But again, it's good, but he kind of Phil Ises it too much. You know how Phil like stumbles over himself sometimes on songs, and then you kind of lose the vibe that you were in with it. So
Right.
I kind of get that with Broken Arrow sometimes because it just doesn't. And even with Tom Thumb, he kind of sometimes doesn't hit the note properly. But it's
Well, but
definitely the
it's more
best.
spoken. Tom
It's
Thumb is more
easier, yeah.
spoken.
And you can get away with sort of that flub in there because it's Dylan-esque in like the way he, you know what I mean? So it's
Right.
got that in there. But yeah, definitely.
That's fantastic. All right, Picasso Moon. I am a fan. You know, it's a cool song. It's got a cool lyric. I realize the ooey part, you know, and it sounds very trapped where it was. You can tell it was written in the late 80s, you know,
Yes.
early 90s.
The dead version of Yarmouth. That's funny. I see. It's it suck. Tell us
I
how you
always
really
say
feel, man.
it's for what I used to call it's a biker tune for the Rolex riders. The guys who go out on Sundays and have the $50,000 bike that's in mint condition.
It's that total late stage dead lyric, you know what I mean? But for that, I like it too. Like I don't hate it for as much as some of the other songs, and I think it's kind of, I don't know, that whole like those albums at the end there, like Built to Last and all that. It fit that time and that tone
Right.
and what it was, and so there's a lot worse songs I felt like that came along that they play, but I never. This song is, to your point, it's kind of like one too that gets stuck in your head and you kind of hum it along and you kind of just like, but like, I don't know. I don't hate it as much as I probably should, or like some other people probably do, like SC, but I forgive it and I like it. And I'm not going to always want to hear it in a show, but I thought it worked in this spot too. Like I thought coming out of the Tom Thumb Blues into that, it worked. Bobby did a really good job with it again,
Right.
like playing it pretty straight and
if you
set up a
listen
good bridge
after
song.
if you listen, you know what's weird? Like every one of these songs, like it's all over now since it's 8.5 minutes. It's about 7, and then there's a minute and a half of dead space. But
Well,
with if you listen to After Tom Thumb Blues, Jerry starts noodling Birdsong. Like it was going to be Birdsong, and then Picasso would have been a big set closer instead of Birdsong being a big set closer, but not a big rock and roll song, you know?
Right. And like we've talked about too, especially with DeAD and Company, how Birdsong can travel sometimes, right? Like it has that dark star element to it sometimes where it can get out there and like really get spacey and stuff when played in the right places. And so it's kind of an odd choice sometimes to close the set with it. Like to me, I always like a Cassidy after it or something that kind of like
Promised Land.
Yep.
3 minutes,
Promised Land.
3 minutes of Chuck
Yeah.
Berry, you know?
Yeah, and then you're out of that set. But I will say it's gorgeous. Birdsong is one of my favorite Jerry tunes. Like it just is so beautiful. And even with the faster pace of this whole set, I thought this was a great version of it. I thought it's just like Jerry singing that song just melts me every time. Like it's just, especially when he does take it out and then when they come back into it, it's just it gives you chills. Like I love that song. It's so good.
Definitely foreshadowing of what we get in the second set.
Yes.
You know, I've always said that Birdsong replaced what Dark Star did,
Mm-hmm.
you know, in the 80s for the most part. And I feel like some of the things Jerry's hitting on, some of the themes he approaches show back up in the Dark Star when we get into that second set.
Yep.
But for this time, it is definitely a very solid first set there. All right, let's do some housekeeping. Tomorrow night, me and T, maybe we'll have a guest. We're going to talk afterwards. Either way, we'll be here at 9:00, talking all the latest. I don't know how much Neil Young we have for tomorrow, but we might have some Joni Mitchell. Sunday, we do 10:00. We do Sunday mornings. And I guess tomorrow night, we're going to have to figure out how to, we'll have to do the random generator.
That's right.
Pick. Or actually, we can do it at the end of this if you can figure out how to pull up
the generator. Yeah,
the fishnet there.
The fish thing. That's right.
So,
all right, for next week.
All right, let's get into this second set. After I listened to this show, Wook is under the weather, Eric. Thank you, SC. after I listened to this show, I went back and listened to the first night of the tour, the Cap Center show. And the China Rider is almost exactly the same. I mean, they're even like the same length. So I was thinking, at this point, China Rider had become one song and there was no growing. There was never going to be a 15-minute rider or something like that.
No, it had. And so opening with Jack Straw, closing the first set with a bird song, perfect, right? Like I love those two bookends. Opening the second set with a China Rider, fantastic. Like I feel like they were just nailing the set list wise, the songs that you want to hear in those positions, fantastic. Coming out with that China, while it's a perfect opener, it just the 90s version of it again, there's so much sound going on in it that it when it first started, it was like really bare bones, right? And it needed a little bit of oomph into it, which it grew into, which I loved, right? Then you get into those mid versions of that China where it just rocks, and you get sometimes that really cool bridge between that and the Rider where they put in that crazy little fun jam and then drop into the Rider. You weren't getting that anymore. And so this later versions of it kind of just had that almost synthy sound in there and stuff to it that just kind of didn't sound like the old China that you were used to. While it's still great to hear it, it's still great to get it. It just wasn't the same as it used to be, so to speak.
Right.
So while it's a great way to open that set, and again, looking at the set list, that China Rider looks like Rain, Dark Star. I mean, come on, you're not going to argue with that. But you're like, sweet, fuck yeah. But the China was definitely not the same China as you were getting 10, 15 years.
For a while in the 80s, Bobby didn't do the lick in the beginning, like the counterpoint to Jerry, and we always used to joke, what are you getting paid for?
I will say though, after all these years, they do. I mean, that it's probably one of the most butter transitions, though. Like they've perfected,
but it
that.
Could go on. There could be 3 or 4 minutes of just a jam. Just let that ride. That thing.
Yeah, like sometimes that really fun jam that they used to get into, where it would open up and just become this blissful, like, oh, incredible, before bringing it back into the Rider. Yes, totally. I feel like it just became so functionable that it was just like almost like you like to say, like timed out with fish, almost. Like it's like, all right, 3 minutes here, 4 minutes here, done. You know what I mean? Like we're playing it 2 times and we know where we're going with it. So you kind of miss out a little bit on, but still that transition is butter going into it. The Rider still is Rider and kicks ass, and you still get Jerry on the fucking headlight, still rips, still, those, the lyric, the hit, the everything, it still just like brings you to your knees and it's like, yeah.
The northbound train. One of the best things when Jerry hit that power chord afterwards.
Just like you said, cannons on the stage.
Yeah, exactly. And then you get a song like Looks Like Rain that sometimes could be very, compact and unfocused and in and out. This one, they took it out. There was a little something extra going on. They pushed almost 11 minutes with it. Bobby was totally laying into it. You believe it. As cheesy as I really think the lyric is cheesy in this one, I'll just put that out there. But you believe Bobby's singing it.
And I'll tell you what, though, with 11 minutes, 4 of those minutes were at the end with him just going, looks like rain, and using those weird echoes and all this weird
like Jerry playing Jerry playing the arpeggios over and over,
and Bobby's just like, I can't stand it, no, I can't stand it, no, like just get like that was the Bobby I used to make fun of, though. That was the Velveeta Bobby that used to be like laying the cheese.
I am a rock star. Thank you very much.
Just laying that cheese in there and just, when he steps back and then he comes back into it, like, hey, stand it now, and then steps back and like, you're just like, oh, Bobby, go. It's just, it's But 11-minute version as a third song, it really, what it did was backed up that China Rider really perfectly, as it does sometimes, like especially even after you get it after It Helps With Frank or whatever. It always fills that great position after one of those songs like that, and then it sets up the Dark Star, which, as you said in the first set, you got a little bit of time in between it. This was like changing pitchers or something. Like they had to call the bullpen. The guy came out, warmed up, and then they dropped into it. But man, when they dropped into it, that had to be a moment being at that show, because there's nothing like getting those first licks of a Dark Star and being like, what? But yes. And it's awesome. It's just awesome.
8 minutes. I was joking that we need more slow build Dark Stars. A good 8 minutes. They found their way. They were so patient, and I feel like Bruce and Vince worked on this, because Dark Star is the kind of song that allows that. It isn't cut. It isn't. This is the way the song is. But 8 minutes before they got to the verse. And then from 10 minutes to when they dropped into drums, like 13 minutes later, might be some of the best playing they did this whole year.
Yeah, that's one thing I always love about Dark Star, is that intro, and how like when it drops into it and then takes off in this other direction, and like a couple minutes you're like, wait, what song are we in again? What were they? Oh, right, Dark Star. You know what I mean? Like it takes you, first it drops you in and takes you to this place, and then it takes you out of that and transports you somewhere else before bringing you back into the lyrics, which is just so awesome. And then what they did with that and took that thing out there. I mean, I was going to say, I know you love space, and I know you love when things break down. You had to love this version of it, because it just got out there and tinkering noises. And to your point, like, you were able to have Bruce and Vince making music in there with the rest of the band and doing it. It did all work. It was like a masterpiece of like building the canvas. It was awesome. It was so great.
Sean, the reason that there's a comma is because the Grateful Dead's website just lists the songs and doesn't put the arrows. And the only thing I thought to put one after was the Dark Star, because I was being a smartass, skipping putting drums in space in there, because it basically was a 45-minute. The space started. Drums and space overlapped. The end of what was listed as drums overlapped, and then once the band came out, it was 2 or 3 minutes they played around, but Garcia knew where he was going and leaned right back into the Dark Star, and just dragged the band back along.
Which I loved hearing that, though. Like, I mean, it got so messy and broken down, and then Jerry just kind of stepped back in and started that bringing back in, which is what they're so masterful for. And what we talk about Fish sometimes doesn't do properly or can't do properly is find that area after being lost and really slowly bring it back in, or tether you back in, instead of just dropping back into it, or heavily stumbling back into it or something. Like, they're masterful at doing that. And it's like seeing somebody, I don't know, somebody who's just a master of their craft creating. It's just unbelievable to hear that. And then when he does drop back into it and hits that next verse, you're just like, holy shit, like, where did we just go? And how did we get back here? And now we're back here. It's so awesome.
Trey is, how do I say this? He's a eager beaver sometimes.
He a little excitable, right? Like, it's a little too, he's not patient enough. I
want to go to cross-eyed. Bro, stop! Let's go to cross-eyed.
Right. Like, or you'll be like in this jam, and all of a sudden be like, "Ooh, you know what? We should get into a number line right here." And you're like, "Wait, what? We could have jammed that and come back into, It's just, and don't get, like, obviously we love Fish and everything, and it's not fair to compare them to the Dead, but these are those moments that separate them, and why I like the Dead, and why they are masters of their craft, and what separates them from every other band ever is their ability to do these things, these simplistic little things that you don't think of, but then when other bands don't do it, you realize how hard and beautiful and awesome it is when a band does do it and masters it. So yeah.
Right. Now the Playin Reprise felt a little forced to me.
Yeah. I this is why, like we talk, what's reprise, what's not a reprise. Like this one, like you told, because they played the night before, coming back into it, it was a little weird though. Like, especially because a lot of times out of Dark Star, you get that breakdown and that slowdown, and it's the perfect spot to drop into the Black Peter. Like, you've already set up
exactly.
It's already there. It's already the runway's there for you to land on. Why throw that? If anything, they could have done Playin before the coming back into Dark Star, maybe, like done the Playin out of the stuff,
or done the reprise after, Black Peter,
yeah,
and then through the Love Light.
That would have worked actually way better too. So it was kind of a weird position for it and kind of a weird version of it. Like it was fun that they did it and cool, but it kind of was in
They
a weird
ran
spot.
through. They went through the music, the bars once, and then they hit it.
Yeah.
So
It wasn't, yeah, it was kind of, but I thought that I was like, man, of all the times to not just kind of drop into Black Peter, it was right there, and you could have just sort of
right.
nobody would have missed playing had you not, doing that there. So yeah, I
Thank
don't
you,
know.
Brian. Thank you, Brian, for your kind words about Picasso Moon. We are starting the Picasso Moon Appreciation Society. We'll have a meeting later this week. But I am with you. I tell you what, when Garcia, he had the coma in 86, and then when was it? 93 that they canceled that fall tour because he got sick, he went into rehab again or something.
Yeah.
I think it was 93. Always felt a little uncomfortable when they played Black Peter, and like Garcia leaned into it because it's a death song, but
Yeah.
Garcia loved it, and his vocal on it he was that guy. He had lived that moment, and you could tell, and it just drips with everything in the vocal.
And we've talked about this before. I love this song, but I love it slow. I love it like that slow deathbed feeling, like that slow version of a guy telling you, like, all this whole thing. So this one a little bit quicker, and it didn't quite hit as hard as some of the other Black Peters do for me because again, this whole show just kind of had that upbeat feeling to it,
Right.
but still, it almost felt. I'll say it almost felt blue. I know we talk about this all the time. It almost felt bluesy, but like an upbeat bluesy, like a BB King type bluesy song with the piano in there and stuff, which was a cool version of it. I'm just not used to hearing it that way. And it almost felt like a cover version of it by a really good cover band playing it in that bluesy tone, in that bluesy bar, a bluesy kind of version of it. And they can nail it. They still sounded great doing it. It just, Black Peter to me is that slow, like you said, like Garcia living through the death and everything to it. So I love that song though, and this was an interesting version to hear. It didn't feel like your typical like heroin version of Black Peter where it gets down there. It felt a little bit more like the cocaine, like Adderall version of Black Peter to me. So still works though.
You know that when Hunter wrote the lyric for Black Peter, he envisioned it being more along the speed of a dire wolf or something. He thought it was going to be like a peppy kind of tune, and Garcia's the one who envisioned it as this funeral
slow thing, which is so brilliant though. It's like taking that script and being like, no, we're going to shoot it this way. This is how I see it. And you're like, oh, okay, it works that way. And then that's how it sort of becomes. But I could totally see it being like a direwolf because it has that feel to it. It's kind of like that same tone to it that if you played it fast, it would work like that and not be as serious, I think, and not as dramatic of a song. But because of the way he does it, I like that drama in it that he's brought to it and really like extends that darkness in it and stuff, which I love. So yeah.
All right, Love Light. It is a ballad.
Yeah, exactly. I see, and exactly. We went slow back, Peter. I agree. The slow ones just.
We should do a members thing and ask the members what their favorite Garcia ballad is. I would like to see what other people think. I'm a Comes a Time guy. If I'm going to get a Garcia ballad, that's the one I want.
Yeah, you are. I know you are. Yeah.
Let me throw something out before we do the encore real quick. There's a podcast called Guess the Year where the premise is it's a game show and they have somebody come on, pick some Grateful Dead songs. They play the clip and then the other people have to guess. And they asked me to come on as the curator. And it Comes a Time made me think of it because it's one of the songs I used. I hope I'm not ruining it. But this Friday it comes out. So we will share the link through Wook Plus if you want to check that out. Look at that. We're getting a China doll, a Stella. See, everybody's going to have a different one.
And I love that. And these are all great choices. And that's the beauty of it is like what Jerry song does that to you? Like what really, gets inside your soul with the way he sings it. And those are great. Exactly. Great answers. I love it.
I used to get annoyed when everybody cheered when he said, the half my life I spent doing Timeline. And everyone would scream. I was, come on. I was like, the beauty of that is a throwaway line in that song almost, you know. Do you know that that was the first time that the F word was ever put on a record?
That's so interesting.
There's this whole thing that Grace Slick said it in We Can Be Together when they're like mother, she says mother, father, tear down the wall. But they paved the way so the Dead could get away with saying it on Wharf Rat and nobody even batted an eye.
Nobody batted an eye because it kind of just flows into the song, right? Like, I mean, like spent doing time for some other fucker's crime. And it's not until after he says it that you kind of go back and you're like, wait, what did he just say? wait, what? But yeah, I mean, Stella Blue is pure magic. Wharf Rat is just, I mean, that song is everything. I mean, what a, you know, but yeah, I digress.
To Lay Me Down. Yeah, see, To Lay Me Down, Dave. That's Roses. Must have been the Roses is such a beautiful, you know. All right, we're totally off the tracks. So they did Love Light. Like you said earlier, it was very congested.
Yeah. I mean, I'll say it's better than getting a Sugar Mags at the end here, which I'll take a Love Light over a Sugar Mag, of course. But the synth, the organ, just too much going on there. I mean, there was just
Bobby chinking away,
chunking away, the fake horn noises, Bobby kind of getting back into his cheesy Velveeta moments with the Love Lights and yeah, it just fun. Again, on paper, this second set is fantastic. Like, love it. A little bit of chinks in the armor.
Love Light's like a number line. When you're there, you're like, oh yeah, Love Light, yeah.
Exactly. And in the moment, you're stoked as hell to hear it, so it's fine. Going back and listening to it, you know, 40 years later, 30 years later, you're like, no, I don't know, so, you know. But I digress. It's fine. It works, and it's a great way to close this set because it fits perfectly with getting a China Rider and a Dark Star and a Black Peter. Yes, throw the Love Light in there. It's fantastic.
And for the encore, we get the other "It's All Over Now" song.
Yep, and another Dylan song, right? Like
Another
two Dylan covers, the other version of "It's All Over Now." It's
Baby Blue was the one that they always did, though.
Yeah,
like Jerry Band did Masterpiece in the 70s and early 80s before Weird like latched onto it. But Baby Blue, there's an album called Vintage Dead or Historic Dead that was from some 66 shows. So Jerry has always loved that one. And again, another ballad. Jerry was so perfect with the ballad encores, that one and what Broke Down Palace.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, and he didn't do Ripple except acoustic, but Ripple is Ripple a ballad? I think it is.
I think it is. I would call it a ballad. And I mean, Baby Blue, Jerry always crushes this song. I think it's so in his wheelhouse, and it's such a iconic sound, you know, that sound to it. And it's, again, man, when they play certain Dylan songs, they just own and play so well. And this is one of those Dylan songs that they really just own it. It's like, you know, they own so many covers, like they do so many covers, obviously, of stuff, but this is one of those that just, yes, Jerry loves it. You can tell he loves it. You can tell he loves playing it. It sounds almost every time it sounds awesome, and it's a great encore. Like it's a good encore to close with, and it just kind of leaves you in that zone of like, okay, yeah, I just got a great Jerry tune to end this show. Fabulous. What more could I want?
You know, Sean, I caught 2 of the 4 Reuben and Cereses, and I did catch an Addicts. Addicts was around. It popped up
a
little bit
here and there. Yeah.
So can you, is it possible for you to open another window and give us a spin for next week's show?
Give it the spin. No, let's do it tomorrow night. I'll have it prepared for tomorrow night.
All right, we're gonna spin for next week's show tomorrow.
We're back to a fish show though for
Random Fish Generator. Yes.
So I don't know if anybody else wants to, you know, throw some suggestions in there or throw some other dates in there. I know Kev hates getting more dates, but anybody want to throw any dates in there? We'll throw them on the wheel tomorrow night when we spin it.
No, we're not going to do the wheel. We're going to go to Fishnet itself.
Oh, we're just going to. Oh, okay. You just want to do the pick a number?
Can we do that now, or do you still want to do that tomorrow?
Let's do it tomorrow.
Okay, let's do it tomorrow. All right. So tomorrow night we may have a guest, we may not. We may talk about Neil Young, we may not.
Hey, it'll be fun. It'll be Kevin and I. We'll talk about. We have a few things to talk. We'll talk fan bases. Maybe I'll talk a little Paris. We'll talk a little fish here and there. We'll talk some spheres coming up. I mean, we're getting close.
It's coming up.
It's getting close. So we got some good stuff in the works. And yeah, next month. Let's see what's next month. May. So April. The end of April, we'll figure out a dead show. We should have. We could have done this one next month since this was an April show, but send in some suggestions if you want for next time's dead show. Kevin, you're right. We do get excited for this. These are my favorites. I love the last Tuesday of the month talking dead. It gets me so excited. I love it.
It's a good one. And we both have our first shows coming up. My first show was in July of 86, and you said yours was in June. So June and July we'll probably do our first shows.
That'll be fun. I can't wait. That'll be a lot of fun.
I tell you what, my first show is rough, dude. Rough. Jerry they played the next night, and then Jerry went into a coma. I mean, he was like done. He was up there sweating like a stuck pig for the whole show. And it was
rough, man.
They brought in the fire department to hose the crowd off. It was so hot that day.
Wow. That's hot. Where was it?
It was like 100 and something at
Maryland?
RFK.
Oh,
no shade. You're in the middle of a concrete bowl that's just baking.
I mean, yeah. Well, that's how. I mean, Vegas for those years that I went to Vegas at the Silver Bowl was ridiculous. They did it in May one year, and then the next year they did it in June, and it was twice as hot. And I always remember like they had misters on the floor, but at one point, and Jerry never talks to the crowd, but at one point Jerry was like, "If anybody passes out, just pass them up to the front,
right?
And we'll take care of them." It was so fun. I mean, that's how friggin' hot it was. Even he was like admitting to the crowd that like, you're melting out there. We understand. We're sorry. And it was one of the tortilla marshmallow wars, and the marshmallows were so melted from the heat, like getting thrown around. It was so gross on the floor. Oh God, I love those days. Man, I miss those dead shows. Anyway, Kevin and I will be back tomorrow night with a new episode of Live, and hopefully Tim will join us again next week for our Wook Club Fish Show. And Sunday, we should all be there probably Sunday morning. You play us out. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you guys tomorrow night and see you all next week.